Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here, coming at you with another trail tip. And normally when I go camping, I want several things in my favor. I want nice balmy days, partly cloudy skies, a slight breeze, keep the bugs away, 60s during the day, 50s at night. And at night, I like to have a fire to make s'mores with, because what's a camping trip without making s'mores? As well as crystal clear skies at night to watch the stars or search for satellites. But tonight I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I waited for a cool rainy night to do a first time all-up test of my GetHome bag with what I call my S4, or Sleep, Shelter, and Sustenance System. The backstory of this is, when I designed my bug-out bag, I didn't have a tent and a sleeping bag and that kind of gear with it because I keep my bug-out bag in the same closet I keep my camping gear. So if I needed to grab my bug-out bag and take a tent and a sleeping bag with me, they were sitting right there next to the bug-out bag. But when I designed my GetHome bag, I didn't have a tent. I didn't have a sleeping bag. Those were all at home. That's where I was headed. So I did a rethink of my GetHome bags. I upgraded my GetHome bags. I added a sleeping bag, I added a tent, I added an air pad, and I added a stove, some fuel, water, and a few other necessities to make spending the night, if I have to do so, on the way home a lot more comfortable. So let's get started with what we've got here. Now, I know some people are going to say, you shouldn't be cooking in your tent. Well, true, but like I say, this is trying to replicate an emergency situation. If I had the opportunity, definitely I would heat this water up outside the tent. But I'm going to assume that I don't have that opportunity, and I'm just going to be doing it right here in the tent. Now understand, I'm not going to have anything with me tonight other than what I have in my GetHome bag, other than the gear that I need to make this video. So let's get this water boiling so we can have our dinner. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize for the poor quality of this video, because the camera is shoved in the corner as far as I can get it, and I'm probably blinding you with that headlamp. This isn't the best condition to be taking a video inside a tent like this. Even with my fisheye lens, which is the widest lens I can get for this camera, I may cut my head off, cut parts of the video off that might be vital, but hopefully you will get the idea of what I'm doing here. So let's get this open and wait for the water to boil. Now I want to mention, this is a Stanley 2-cup adventure kit. It's basically the boil pot, the lid, and there are 2 plastic cups that come with it. They're about $17 to $19, and I think they're still available. But I take the plastic cups out because I'd rather have the stove and the fuel and the base inside rather than 2 plastic cups. This is not going to be a review of this type of item, but simply an overview of what I'm putting in my GetHome bag so I can have, hopefully, a little bit more comfortable trip coming home than one I might expect. Okay, we got a full boil going on there, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. Mountain House lasagna. Got to tell you, I've never had this, so it will be an adventure consuming it. Smells good. Want to go over the gear that I purchased just for this purpose. As I said, I upgraded my GetHome bags from a couple of REI 27-liter packs to a Kelty Red Wing 50, and unfortunately they're discontinued. They were discontinued when I came across them. I managed to snag a couple of them that were still available online, and if you find one now, it's going to be some new old stock, or maybe somebody selling one used. I don't think you can get them from Kelty. You might find some new old stock in some of the stores. But I went with a 50-liter so I would be able to carry the tent, the sleeping bag, my air pad, and all the other gear that I added as part of my S4 system. Now let me explain to you the S4 system. Sleep, shelter, and sustenance system. Sleep being the sleeping bag, the air pad, air mattress, and I did get a Climate Cush pillow. Shelter. This is a Kelty Escape 2. And again, it's a discontinued product. Seems to be I'm a curse for good products that I want one, it becomes discontinued. As for my cooking system, I said the Etekcity stove using the propane containers. I've got a little portable base here to give me a little bit more sturdy, and the Stanley Adventure 2-cup set. So that is what I have added besides my 2 meals to the pack, so that's why I had to get a larger pack. In case I needed to carry these items, I would have the capacity in my pack to do so. I want to talk about the tent a little bit. When I sat down and codified what I required my tent to be or not to be, there were 7 things that I wanted the tent. There were 7 requirements I had for the tent. Number 1, it had to be lightweight. Who doesn't want that? Number 2, I wanted it compact so when it goes in the backpack, it didn't take up a lot of space. Again, who doesn't want that? I wanted a 3-season tent. I did not want a 4-season tent simply because the bulk, the weight, and the price. It does get cold where I live. In fact, it does get cold enough to warrant a 4-season tent. However, odds are, I'm playing the odds that I'm not going to use the tent in such extreme cold environments. I also wanted the tent to be basic, simple, nothing fancy. I don't need 2 entrances, I don't need 2 vestibules, I don't need a power inlet, I don't need a gear loft, I don't need lace curtains. I needed a very basic tent, no frills. I also wanted a freestanding tent, a tent that would be stand up on its own that did not require stakes and pegs and ropes and guidelines to pitch. When I'm camping, I have an option to set up on the ground, but when I'm in an emergency situation, I may have to set up the tent in an area or a spot where I cannot drive a stake. I can't get a peg into the ground, so I have to have a freestanding tent. I also wanted it quick and easy to set up, and although it looked pretty easy at the beginning of this video, it did take a little bit more time because I was unable to take the time to video me guying and staking it down because of the rain starting in. But it still was a very good time. It takes me about 10 minutes to pitch this tent. Now you're probably thinking, well, he just got done describing hundreds if not thousands of tents that are available out there on the market. Well, I only mentioned 6 items. There was a 7th requirement that I had that made this tent one of the few options available to me, and that was my tent be gray. You're probably wondering, why didn't you get a camouflage tent? Well, very simple. I don't want a camouflage tent. I'm not putting this up in an urban or a rural environment. I'm setting it up in an urban environment. I live and work in a large city. Therefore, a camouflage tent would tend to stand out. To me, a gray tent would tend to more blend in to an urban environment. So that's why I went with this tent. It is a 2-person tent. I know I'm paying for a weight penalty on that, but I get a couple advantages on it. First off, I got it at a good price. It was on clearance. Second off, it's about the same size as my Big Agnes Copper Spur UL2, so I'm comfortable with this size, and I'm comfortable with carrying this weight. So I have the space to set up my sleep system and still have room, not outside in the vestibule, but inside the tent. And it is gray. Now I want to go over a couple more things on the tent before I start in on my supper, and that is, let me read my notes here because I have a terrible memory. It's only available as a 2-person tent if you can find one. It is not available as a 1-person tent. I wouldn't mind having a 1-person tent to save a pound or 2 on weight, but I went ahead and got a 2-person tent. The manufacturer does not supply a footprint at all with this tent, so if you want a footprint, you're going to have to source your own. It also does not come with a stuff sack. You saw me take it out of a stuff sack when I was setting it up. That is a Sea to Summit 10-liter compression bag. Kelty does not supply a compression bag for this tent, nor a footprint. It weighs 4 pounds, 5 ounces, which is reasonable. I mean, it's not super light. It's not one of those ultra light, crazy light, super lights, but still it's a manageable weight for me to carry. I do not put the stakes or the poles in the compression sack for obvious reasons. Those stay separate in my bag. But still, I think for the price that I got them for, being gray, being a two-person tent with lots of room inside, I think I got a good choice. So it's time for me to eat. This is a 2-serving meal, but I figured that would be acceptable because in an emergency situation, I wouldn't have a problem leaving a half a meal behind if I had to, but I would rather eat the whole thing, and more than likely in an emergency situation, I'm going to be hungry enough to eat 2 servings. But it's pretty good. Now, there are 3 other reasons why I did not get a 4-season tent. Number 1, I have one of the better insulated pads out there on the market. This is a NeoAir Xtherm from ThermARest. It has an R value of 6, one of the highest rated R values out there in an air pad. I hate to tell you this, I bought it at a garage sale from REI for $20. It had a leak in it. That leak has been repaired and it works just fine. And the last reason I didn't go with a 4-season tent is because of this. This is a Wiggy's 0-degree sleeping bag. It is military grade. I'm not going to be getting into a lot of details about it right now. Suffice it to say, it was a 0-degree Fahrenheit bag, which is below the 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which was my goal for this system. I have tested this tent and this sleeping bag and this pad and what I would wear on a cold winter night along with the stuff that I have in my bag, and I was able to sleep comfortably in 18-degree weather. I haven't had a chance to get it colder than that, but here's a picture of my thermometer the night after I did a cold weather test of this. So I know I'm comfortable with this system down to 18 degrees. It's just I've never tested the whole thing all together as a unit. So that's the purpose of today's video, is to test everything all at once to make sure that everything works together. I'm not missing anything. I don't have any holes in my gear. I'm not planning something wrong. I'm doing everything right, hopefully. So when the time comes, if I have to deploy this in an emergency, I'm ready to go. So now that I'm well fed, my tummy's happy, it's time to make my eyelids happy. So I'm going to be crawling into bed and calling it a night. Good morning. Well, I'm going to consider this a successful test of the gear. It's not as realistic as possible because there are more adverse conditions I could get into, but it gives me a great idea of where I stand with this gear. There's going to be some changes I'm going to make. I'm not going to get into them. I'm going to add a few pieces, take out a few pieces, change a few pieces. Most notably, down along this seam at the bottom of the tent where the floor meets the sidewall, there's a seam all the way around. This is a bathtub floor, but it's seamed where the floor meets the wall. So there's a seam all the way around the bottom. There's moisture coming in. I noticed that when I started rolling up my air mattress. So I've got a little bit of moisture problem. It could be simply condensation got in and came down the tent, but it warrants further investigation. But that's the reason I wanted to test this, to find those little problems like that. Because in a real emergency, something like that could be very, very dangerous. And that's why you always want to test your gear. So I'm just about packed up. I'm ready to get out of here. I'm going to leave the tent set up and come back when it's starting, you know, the rain has quit, because it's still coming down a little bit. So I'm going to grab my gear, get it in my truck, head home, come back this afternoon and pick up the tent. So this is Backpack Hat coming after this trail tip. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on my videos. Hit that bell, and I'll see you out on the trail.